Good morning, everyone. Jim Clark here at the Synchronicity Sanctuary in Central Virginia to share another contemplative focus with you. And the focus that I wanted to share with you today is too much thinking makes you crazy, so stop. Easier said than done, as we all know who meditate as a practice on a daily basis. The default polarities that are at play in the mental dimension are noise and silence, thinking and non thinking. Noise is the default dominant polarity that delivers imbalance. To create the balance and proportional holistic experience in the mental dimension, we must put emphasis on its opposite, or the non dominant polarity, or silence. The remedy is thus to stop thinking, or at least to stop thinking from being the dominant polarity. In this understanding, the balance principle is most important in relation to the mental dimension, as it is in all dimensions. So, thinking, incessant thinking, unfocused thinking, the kind of thinking that just comes up and expresses your own madness without you even realizing that's what you're doing. And I was watching a yogi yesterday on YouTube who is creating a sanctuary himself and has several people who are his disciples, and he had some very interesting comments to make with regard to thinking. And one of his comments that caught my attention yesterday was that one of the biggest problems that we have, especially in the West, because we're so tied into the internet and to constant input from the internet and social websites and so forth and so on, is that we have so much information. We have more information available to us today than any other time in the history of humankind. So, and what is happening from this is that we have a whole lot of information, but very little experience. So that imbalance between being silent with yourself and relating to your own experience of life as your guide and your wisdom and your knowledge, shall we say, of who you are and what life is and how to navigate yourself through life, it's missing. So there's this advice, there's that advice, there's all kinds of opinions and so forth and so on. And what's happening with all this is that there's a lot of depression. There's probably more depression in the world today than there ever has been before. And it's just an overload in the negative polarity. It's so much noise, and much of it we're processing through the mind because we're watching it on the internet or wherever, or we're talking with our friends, or we're whatever, but we're constantly indulging in noise and negative noise at that. So I saw a little bit of this. Well, I see it every day actually, and to me, it's just after meditating for years and years and years, I've developed enough balance and enough wholeness in myself that I can only withstand so much thinking myself, no matter what it is for. It can be for this even. But once in a while, I just get pulled so strongly to go back into silence because it's where I enjoy myself the most, where I create the most balance that I can within myself in the mental dimension. Uh, uh, One of the experiences I recently had that really brought this to light for me was I have had a condition ongoing for some years now that has limited how much I can walk, which is being addressed, fortunately. But anyway, to make a long story short, I was in my room, I was sitting watching YouTube or something, and then I got tired of all the noise. I got tired of sitting. I wanted to move the energy. This is one of the things we do for balance. In the physical dimension, we move the energy physically so that we can get rid of the noise, the physical noise in the body. And then we address any emotional noise that's going on, and then we address the mental noise that's going on. And then when all the dimensions in our primary trinity are addressed, we can enjoy greater wholeness and stillness, and the consequent bliss that comes from that. So I, anyway, decided to get up and walk. And as I did so, I felt particularly drawn to walk more than I have walked for some time. It was a perfect day, the temperature was good. So I started walking, and then I decided, okay, I'm going to walk farther than I've walked for a long time because I just really felt like I wanted to move the energy. And this is what I did. And as I kept walking, my own dynamics, I had this radical expansion in awareness, a radical expansion in my own bliss, because I was, for the most part, silent. I was witnessing and watching the forest and the lake and all of nature as I was walking, and allowing it to be what it is. And just by that alone, it actually has its own stillness to it. And if you absorb that, if you witness that while you're being silent, it was great. I had such a radical expansion and awareness, and the energy dynamic was very strong, and yet it helped me to remain silent. It wasn't the kind of energy that was chaotic or distressful in any way at all. So I did this walk, and when I was done with the walk, I returned to my room. I sat down, and I was just silent for quite some time because it was so strong and so peaceful and so blissful. And it was only because I have spent years meditating twice a day, at least 2 hours a day, to create the balance in my mental dimension and as well as my other dimensions, to have that choice. Thinking is just an automatic activity, and if you don't meditate, if you're not creating balance consciously, your thinking will drive you crazy. And this is exactly what we're seeing today. There's more craziness in the world today than there ever has been. There's more information people are just absorbing without having any way to process the information because it's not related to your own experience. So if you relate to your experience first and you keep grounded and you keep focused, then there's not much you have to think about. Sure, we have to think once in a while, like I was thinking to prepare for this, I was thinking to set it up, but these are just kind of like focused thoughts that happen for practical reasons, and that kind of thinking isn't random, it isn't incessant, and it isn't negative. And so it doesn't really bother me too much to engage in that kind of thinking when I have to, when I'm doing my work. And I guess the lesson in all of this is to meditate, meditate, meditate. It's always what comes from any of these contemplations. I remember when this contemplation was given to us by Master Charles, the same thing happened that always happened when he gave us a contemplation. The focus was on mental stillness. And so what happened was, of course, is we all experienced more mental activity than normal because it was bringing out whatever was in us that was incongruent with the focus. And in that experience, we began to appreciate the focus even more. And so we went deeper into our meditation and we did create more balance in the mental dimension as a result of that contemplation. This is how the contemplations work. You take a focus, you dedicate yourself to that focus, and you do it with a strong intention to create more balance, and it will show you where you are in relation to that contemplation. It's wonderful. It's so simple, and yet it works. And there's a story that he told us as well about a monk who was with his master, and he was having his own private facilitation with his master, and after answering several of the monk's questions, the master went silent. So the disciple looked at him and said, "What are you thinking?" And the master replied, I try not to. The implication being that a diligent and wakeful focus on silence creates balance and holistic experience, and it does. So, whatever you do in your day, whatever you're involved with, if it's in an office, if it's in a physical thing where you're physically active, if you keep a focus on silence in yourself, even when you have to speak, even when you have to interact with people, then that focus will help you to develop even more silence, more stillness in your mind. And when the mind is still, the emotions and the body tend to follow along with that, since we're so mentally busy being Westerners and all. And to us, thinking as second nature, because we've lived in the age of information, and we've been getting more and more of that to deal with one way or the other. And so it's just natural for us to develop skills and whatnot in relation to thinking, learning something is thinking about something. It's a focused kind of thinking, and yet it's thinking. But if you balance that out with meditation and developing the non-dominant polarity of stillness in the mind, eventually that will become the dominant polarity in the mental dimension. And when that becomes dominant, the choice to not think is with you. Before that, you have to do a little work to get there. But now it's when you choose to go silent, if you've developed enough balance and devoted your life to your own fulfillment in that sense, it's a choice. All you have to do is just close your eyes and boom, there it is. So that's what I wanted to share with you today. Uh, Stillness versus activity, noise versus quiet in the mind. And that's something that we all like to have once in a while. We want peace of mind, even though we don't even know the words to it, to express that. But that's just what people are craving in today's world, yet there isn't any for them because they haven't developed any balance on the one hand, and yet they're surrounded by more noise than ever. And so they don't have the quiet of nature. They don't have a space they can go to. They don't have their own sanctuary where they can develop the quiet that they need in order to develop the balance that they need to have a holistic experience of who they are and what life is. So that's what I wanted to share. Once again, this is Jim Clark at the Synchronicity Sanctuary, welcoming you and saying thank you so much for being here and watching this little short live stream. I will be back again probably in a couple of weeks. I think next week we're going to take a day off and enjoy the holiday just like everybody else does. So until then, probably in about 2 weeks, I'll be back up. Uh, I'll work on another contemplative focus to share with you. Thank you so much for being here.